We are holding, good morning, everybody. We're holding really on 45B5, but I'm going to start us off on 45B4 only because it's one thing. We're going to go very quickly. This is a very easy Gemara. Again, I just want to make a few points. This is a discussion that we're getting into regarding the blessings that are made on the Sukka, on the Lulav. They were working it out. It is not the way we do it today. Remember, what we do today is every day we make a bracha on the lulav. When we pick it up, we make the bracha on the tilas lulav, on the taking of the lulav. Every time we walk into the sukkah, we make a bracha leishe basukah, on sitting in the sukkah. The first days that we do, we also add the bracha of shechianu. But how is it that we know to do this? It happens to be because of the discussion we're going to have today. They worked it out, how the brachas. And you'll see there's many different opinions, and we settle on one of them. That's what we do. Okay? So you're going to ask, what are you talking about? These are brachas. But the answer is because brachas einay me'akeves. Brachas are not ma'akiv. Don't get in the way. That means if you do a mitzvah, let's say you put on your tefillin, and you forget to make a bracha, you've been mekayim the mitzvah of tefillin. You fulfilled your commandment of putting on tefillin. You forgot to do a blessing. Okay? So the blessings, it's called brachos eino ma'akeves. Blessings are not ma'akiv, do not interfere. Okay? You're supposed to make the blessings, but if you didn't, the sky's not falling. The commandment is still fulfilled. So therefore, this is what was going back and forth. Now, the other side of that, of course, is that when should you be making a blessing, given that you say the words, blessed are you, Hashem. And we say Hashem's name, Elokeinu melech haolam, God, the King of the world, right? So you're using God's name. You don't want to use it in vain, obviously. You don't want to say God's name in vain. So now the question is, when should you make the brachas? That's the discussion for today. Okay? Good. Having now said that, here we go. Okay, we are 45B4. 45B4, the last paragraph. We're going to repeat what we did yesterday. 45B4. We're just going to start again from Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, which is in the right-hand column, the last paragraph. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Lulav Shiva. I'm telling you that you make a blessing on taking the lulav all 7 days of Sukkot. The Sukkah, but going into the Sukkah, you make a blessing only Yom Echad, only on the first time you walk in there, only on the first day. My Tama, what's the reason? Well, in my Tama, we're talking about the blessing of Leishe Basukah, sitting in the Sukkah. My Tama, what's the reason? Lulav the Sake Laila Miyamim, Lulav, which is broken up by the nights, because Lulav is only a mitzvah of the day. You have to see the mitzvah, right? So Lulav Esrik Hatas Ve'arava, the 4 species, is only a mitzvah, a daytime mitzvah. So every night breaks it up. Kol Yoima Mitzvah Bi'ape Nafshu. Each day is a separate, mutually exclusive mitzvah. Sukkah, the Loi Mipsaki Lailas Miyamim. The sitting in the sukkah, there is no break of night and day. Whenever you want to go eat, you need to go sit in the sukkah. So it's one long mitzvah, Kula Shiva, all 7 days. We're on 45B5 now. It's like one long day. So we're dealing with one long mitzvah. Okay? So says Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. V'Rabba Bar Bar Chana Amar Rav Yochanan. Rabbi Chana says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, no, I'm Sukkah Shiva. In fact, the Sukkah, you say the bracha all 7 days. Every time you go in there, you make a bracha of sitting in the Sukkah, Leishe Basukah. The Lulav Yom Echad, the taking of the 4 minim, you only do the blessing the first time you take it. Just the opposite of what the other one says, or Rabbi Yehuda says. My Tama, what's his reasoning? Sukkah diaraisa Shiva. Sukkah is biblical in nature, all 7 days of the holiday. All 7 days of Sukkah is a biblical command. Then Leishe Basukah, you shall sit In the sukkah, every time you go in, it's a mitzvah min Torah. All 7 days, and it says Shivat Yomi. So therefore, every time I walk in there, I got a biblical command. I'm going to say a blessing. Lulav derabanan sagi lebechad yoima. Lulav, which is only a derabanan, the other 6 days. The first day is the only biblical command of v'lakatam lachem b'yom harishon, on the first day. And what do you call all those 4 species?
You should not say blessing.
Ah, very good. So, Bob, the point, we know that that's not true, as our Gemara will proceed to say. And now at that point, we'll speak to Rabbi Bob, right? Okay, okay. But at this moment in time, exactly this Monday, Omar, Rabbi Baba Chana, Omar Rabbi Yochanan. So let's call it Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, seems to hold that on rabbinical commands, you don't make a blessing. Exactly what seems to be coming out at this moment in time in the Gemara. That, of course, will change. But at this point in the game, that's where we are. Now we have a third opinion. When Robin came, he said it also in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, but he had a different version of Rabbi Yochanan. Shiva. This and that, both the sukkah and both the lulav, you go ahead and you say the blessings. On the sukkah, every time you go in, you say Leishim Sukkah, and the lulav, every time you pick it up, you say Amatilas lulav. Okay, which means that in this case, according to Robin Bar Rabbi Yochanan holds that on a rabbinical, you also make a bracha. And in fact, Amar Rabbi Yosef, Niktoik Rabbi Bar Chana biyadecha, take Rabbi Bar Chana in your hands, the Kula Moiri Kamen Kamosi B'Sukkah. Because all the Maroyim quote Rabbi Yochanan agree with Rabbi Bar Chana, right? That you make a blessing on the Sukkah. In other words, we rule that you make a blessing over the Sukkah throughout the 7 days of the festival. What's the halacha? Wait a minute, just a second. What's the halacha regarding lulav? Right? We don't know. At this moment in time, from the words of Rabbi Yosef, I don't know what he holds with regard to lulav. Right now, all I know, he says, Naka the Rabbi Baba Chana biyadecha, who says, look, what does Rabbi Baba Chana say? Lulav 1 day, and Sukkah all 7 days, because Sukkah is a diaraisa all 7. Lulav is only a diaraisa on the first day. The other 6 days is the Rabbanon. And clearly, Rabbi Yosef seems to be holding on a Rabbanon. You don't make a bracha. That's what we go. Yes, Daddy.
That's what I was going to say. When he says, look at Rabbi Bachon Biyota, he could have said, look at Rabbi.
Right, and that's because he's saying by both, which must mean therefore that Robin is saying in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that even on a Rabbanon you make a bracha, and Rabbi Baba Chana Rabbi Yochanan seems to be saying on a Rabbanon you do not. So Rabbi Yosef is taking on the Yisrael. That's why it's a Rabbi Baba Chana. So the point here is that right now where we are standing at this moment, as we're about to get on to yesterday's daf, is that where there's a diaraisa biblical, we make a blessing. Where there is a rabbinical command we leave it alone. Okay, which of course we're going to blow out of the water. We're going to blast it all over the place, because of course we already know today that we do make prophets even on rabbinicals, and now you're going to see how we get there. Meisvei, they asked the question. Here we go. We're on yesterday's daf 46A1. If somebody prepares the lulav for himself, that means before Sukkot, you put together your lulav and esrog, right? You stick in your 3 myrtles, hadassim, you stick in your 2 aravis, your willows, you put the nice little rings on your lulav, right? You're all prepared. Says the Gemara over here, which of course we do not do today, but it says, and when you put it together, you make the bracha of Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'achiyanu who has given us light and sustained us and brought us to this season.
It's funny that's jarring to our modern ears.
Right, and you're going to see, it's the Gemara again, we're going to work this through. Not to loss his pay, when he takes it on Yontif, he makes the bracha. On the commandment of taking the lulav. And even though he makes a blessing on the lulav of Natilas lulav on the first day, you go ahead and you do make a blessing all 7 days on the lulav. The other days are rabbinic in nature. Nonetheless, I'm telling you, make a bracha. And now the brayta goes further. If somebody makes a sukkah for himself before the Yom Tov, that means he builds it, let's say, between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. He makes the bracha. Makes it nichtas liyashiba oimer when he goes in on Yom Tov. He says, and since he made the blessing on the sukkah on the first day, you don't make a blessing. Says the Gemara, kasha lulav kasha sukkah lulav to lulav from Rabbi Yochanan is a steer, because this brayta says you make a blessing on the lulav all 7 days, even the last 6 days, which are rabbinical. Mashen came the sukkah. This brayta says you only make a bracha on the first day and not the rest of the day, right? Because it's one long mitzvah. It's one mitzvah arucha. All 7 days are like one long day, because the commandment is both day and night. Day and night. It's both day and night. Good morning.
I guess the concern is saying a broken thing. That's really what's in there.
Yeah, underlying it is, do I go ahead and say on a rabbinical commandment also a bracha? Because brachas eina me'akebet. Right? I don't need a bracha in order to fulfill the commandment. So should I be saying a bracha on a biblical? I understand on a midat midi araisa, I got it. Midrabanan, that's sort of questionable. But now we know where we're heading to because we know what we do. But right now the Gemara is working its way through this shaila. But right now we've got a stira in a contradiction in Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan we said we're going to go like the Rabbi Yochanan that says that sukkah we make a bracha all 7 days because every day is biblical in nature, right? And we're not going to make the blessing on lulav except for the first day. And here these brayses are just the opposite. Lulav we're making all 7 days, and sukkah we're only making it 1 day. So how do we explain? Bishlema lulav al lulav like kasha 46A1 right hand column. Bishlema lulav al lulav like kasha. Lulav to lulav is not a question. Can that we say that you have to make the bracha all 7 days? Bisman shebeis hamikdash kayam. In the Beis Hamikdash, biblically, how many days did we take the lulav and esrog? All 7 days, exactly. So biblically, we take it all 7 days. So therefore, we've established a blessing all 7 days. Here already, we're talking about the Beis Hamikdash is not standing. So now in the provinces, right? What did we say before? In the provinces, there was only a chiyuv of the first day. The only mitzvah is to take the lulav and esrog, right? So when? The first day. The other 7 days are only rabbinical in nature. Says over here, works out perfect. I'm telling you, only make a bracha on the first day. When the Beis Hamikdash is not standing, you only make a bracha on the first day, and the other 7 days you don't make a blessing because they're only rabbinical in nature. But ala sukkah kasha, I have not answered up the contradiction, the stira from sukkah. Here, this brayta says you make a bracha only on the first day because since it's a right, so it's biblical in nature. It's one mitzvah. Because the moment sukkah starts, I must live and eat in the sukkah night and day. Night and day, there's no break. Right? Mashen came lulav. There is a break every day because nighttime is not the mitzvah of lulav. Only daytime is the mitzvah of lulav. Sukka became a problem, so we answered lulav. Good when the base of is standing and the mountain base of is standing. Sukkah is a mitzvah whether the base of is standing, whether the base of is not standing. Therefore, you explain to me right here. This price said you only make one bracha because we look at it as one mitzvah, and before we said in the name of Rabba Baba Chan Omer Rav Yochanan Sukkah Shiva Sukkah D'Oraisa Shiva. Because it's got the 7 days, it's like you said, the pasuk says, Shiva Yomim, therefore every day I make a bracha. How do we explain the contradiction? It says the Gemara Tanoyu. In fact, it's a mitzvah Tanoyu and it ties to tefillin. So here's the situation about tefillin. Is nighttime part of the mitzvah or not? Now, don't jump to conclusions here. Is tefillin a mitzvah tamidus? What does that mean? The moment you turn 13, you now have a mitzvah of tefillin. The truth of the matter is, you now have a mitzvah of tefillin forever and ever and ever until you're God. You know why? Because Minat Torah, they wore tefillin Shabbos. The only reason why we don't wear tefillin Shabbos is because of that great gezerah, Shema Yavirenu Talad Amos B'Shus Rabbah. I might come to carry it for Amos in the public thoroughfare, but that's a rabbinical gezerah, rabbinical enactment. Tefillin, the moment I become by mitzvah, what happens? I've got a mitzvah tamidus. So let's learn through this Gemara here. Tanoi, Titania, tefillin, kol zaman shemenichen mevarach aleim. Tefillin, every time one puts them on, one recites a blessing over them. Divrei Rebbe. Rebbe says every time you put it on. That means if you wore it by chakras and you took them off, and then you want to put them on my mincha, make another bracha. Obviously, we're not talking about Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, but okay.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
If you took off your tefillin by shacharis and you went out for whatever reason and you came back, you have to do a bracha again. Lahavdil, what you do by a talis. If basically a talis fell down, what the halacha would be when a talis fell down and you basically put it back on you.
Jerry, can you wait 5 minutes? Because the Gemara is going to get right to that. Exactly. Give it exactly 5 minutes. So right now, go. Yeah.
I wanted to back up all the way.
Back up.
I'm not seeing the separation of Sukka and Lulav, and especially if they're saying, okay, because the temple is not there.
No, so here's the basic separation. First, we got one separation. Sukkah, how many days I got to sit in there? All 7 days, night and day. It's one continuous mitzvah.
Okay.
Lulav is only a mitzvah by day, not by night. So every night is breaking it apart. Once you see that, right? So now you got two different things. Second, Lulav, it says the words, "V'lakachtem lochem," you shall take for you, Bayom Harishon, on the first day, okay, and then it goes through, all the creates Hadav, Tanfis, Tamarim, all the 4 species. So what does it say? You should take all the 4 species, Bayom Harishon, on the first day. That means, biblically speaking, each of us individually, outside of the holy temple, outside of the Beis Hamikdash, have the mitzvah of what? Only 1 day. The other 6 days that we take the lulav is all rabbinical in nature. Okay? So, that reality separates everything. That's what this Gemara was talking about. And since we're dealing in brachos, and remember, blessings, you don't have to make a blessing to fulfill your commandment. Nonetheless, we're supposed to make blessings. Biblically, we all agree. God commanded, we need to bless him for commanding. That you made us holy and commanded us to do this mitzvah. But rabbinically, God didn't command that. The rabbis commanded it. The Gemara is going to ask this question. How can you say the words, that you made us holy with your commandments and commanded us? No, you didn't. The guys commanded us. The rabbis commanded us. Human beings commanded us. We just took it on. Right? How can we say those words?
Just to cash on this issue, It's kasha on all things rabbinically mandated. Hanukkah.
Oh, I don't want to say it, giving away the story. All the stuff.
Make new rules.
That's giving.
How is the rabbi be able to say, you could say Asher Kedishon as if God Almighty Himself said it in the Torah?
Exactly.
The most that the rabbis are given the authority.
Patience, exactly. You guys, if according to you guys, we should just rip it out. You see, so this is what I was going to say. What we guys got to realize that everything that we're doing today, that we just take for granted today, have to be worked out. And one of the basics thing is, if I don't have to make a blessing to fulfill the commandment, who gives me the right to use the word name of God so flippantly, as it were? And while we're on the subject, who gave Chazal? Who gave the rabbis permission to do it? This is what we're working. And that's the argument, because you can see some of the Tanoim held, no, on a rabbinical, we're not making a blessing. This was a major fight, very sweet fight, a Mechemes HaTorah, right? A war of the Torah, but this was a major fight. How far do you go, right? And as Cheskel just said, let's work our way down the Omet, and there we go. So Tanoi, Titania, Tefillin, Kol Zaman Shemanichim B'Baruch Aleim Divrei Rebbe. Every time you put them on, mid Shacharis, Mincha, anytime you put them on, you make a blessing, because each time is a new, as it were, a new mitzvah. Okay, now we're on 46.8.2. The Chachamim Oimrim, and the Chachamim say, Ein mevarich el shachas b'vad. You make a blessing only once a day. You make in the morning, you get up at 6:45, or you daven at the 9 o'clock minute, which is turning into the 8:30 minute next week, apparently. Okay, you go ahead. I'm sure there's going to be a fight about that. What do you call it? Here we go. You're going to tighten that up. And what do you call it? You make the Lohaniach Tefillin, the putting on of Tefillin. I'm deliberately saying on Lohaniach Tefillin because that's another conversation, because we only make a mitzvah, we only make a bracha. The most important bracha is on the doing of the mitzvah, not on the al mitzvah tefillin, on the commandment of tefillin. That's itself is not as important as al oniach tefillin, the doing of them. It's like we say, the kishmaya kol shev, to hear the sound of the shel, the tilas, the taking of the lulav. We always make a bracha on the doing of the mitzvah. So now it happens to be that this Gemara that we just learned is very hard, because there is a great machlokes rishonim. It goes, and they go into this Gemara here, because if tefillin is a mitzvah to midus, that means the moment you turn bar mitzvah, the truth is you're supposed to be going in your tefillin all your life, day, night, the whole business. And the only reason why we don't do it Shabbos is because you might carry it to Daled Amos. The only reason why you don't wear it at night is because at night you might let out gas, and you're not supposed to do that with your tefillin. But in the Ikka halacha is you're supposed to be on tefillin forever, right? It's part of like wearing a yarmulke. Boom, you're supposed to be going with tefillin. Then you should only make one bracha the moment you become bar mitzvah. Boom. Baruch Hu Hashem Amavod. But yeah, Rav Scheinberg, they never took them off. Never took them off. Right. Baruch Shem. You would say Baruch Hu Hashem Amavod. Baruch Hashem Amavod the Oil Poed. And before you say the by Ma'ariv, you would make the bracha on the tefillin, and that's it. You're done for the rest of your life, and that's it. You're strapped on for the rest of your life, right? But the fact that, so we're not getting into it, but it is a much larger conversation about what does it mean to be a mitzvah to midus, a full-time mitzvah. Anyways, so what do you see from here? That Rebbe holds that every day you make brachas many times. Every time you put on tefillin, you make a bracha. So regarding Sukkah, even though Sukkah is one long mitzvah, because the moment Sukkah starts, you have to sit in the Sukkah for 7 days, one long night and day and night, so one long mitzvah. Nonetheless, every time you come into the Sukkah, you make a brand new Leisha B'Sukkah.
Day and you didn't come out to the seventh, you already say one blessing.
That's it, one blessing. That's it. That's it. So in other words, if it was Corona and you decided I'm making a minion in my sukkah, I'm making the world's biggest sukkah, and I'm doing it, I'm putting the beds in there and everything else, and if the Yankees are in the World Series, I'm putting the television in there, Remember, Daddy, sports are allowed in the sukkah. We learned that a few dafim back. So if the Yankees make the World Series, you're allowed to put the Gemara said for David, sports. It was sports. That's what I argued. That's what I argued here. I said Teishuke Keduru. And the Gemara brings it down. If you remember, I pointed out sports. That's what I see. That's what I see. But a Boger and we don't have those problems. That's all. Now to keep it out, hey. Oh, no, that's bringing the Yates on that. Anyway, so back to so when you come in, no, he's talking about if you lived there. If you lived there for 7 days and you never lived your sukkah, you never went out, you make one bracha. If you make it only once,
then you make it again.
No, apparently it seems to me, maybe not. From here, it seems to be the going in and out. Maybe my father might be right. Jeff. That if every time you have a new meal, right, you make a new kiddush, a new thing, you might establish it. It might be according to this man. You would say like again. Yeah. That might be interesting. You might. That's the break. Right. So maybe it's not the going in and out. It might be you're sitting in the sukkah, but every meal is a meal unto itself. And you know what? It makes more sense anyways, because let's keep going. Because again, this is all academic, because we're going to see what we do anyways. Itma, Abaya Amah Hilchus Rebbe, the halacha is like Rebbe. Okay, that every day you make many times a bracha on tefillin every time you put it on. V'Rabba Amah Hilchus Kirabanan, the halacha is like the Rabbanan that you only do it once a day, like we hold. Lo niach tefillin. Amar Rami Shmuel, Ramari said the son of Shmuel's daughter. Why does it say Shmuel's daughter and not the father's name? Because the father, Shmuel's, she got kidnapped. And the children were born, and so we only mentioned Shmuel's daughter. From the guy, from the kidnapper. It was Megayah. Yeah, Chazina Leila Rabba. Yeah, I think they say that, but nonetheless, that's what it said. Chazina Leila Rabba Deloy Ovid Kishmate. I see that Rabba himself did not go like his own teaching that the halacha is like the Rabbanan that you only make a bracha once a day. Ella maktim say. In the morning, he would get up, go to the bathroom. He would then come out. Jerry, you listening to this? He would then come out, wash his hands, and put on his tefillin and make a bracha. If he needed to use the bathroom again later that day, would come out, wash his hands, put on the tefillin, and make another bracha. Jerry, this is that's what I was telling you. And what Jerry said was, this is a din in Hesach Hadas. In other words, we're saying you go to the bathroom, your mind is off the tefillin. Your mind's off the tefillin. The tefillin you just took off. Make a bracha afterwards. Your talis, we hold that if your talis falls off you, right, falls off you on the complete inner thing, you got to make a bracha again. The satif batzitzis. Because we say your mind goes off of it. If you let your talis fall off, it's because your mind wasn't paying attention to what was going on.
And that's halacha. So the question is, what do we do by tefillin?
So by tefillin, we hold that if you go to the bathroom, we don't make another bracha, as far as I know. As far as I know, by tefillin, we do not make a bracha, because tefillin are so holy that when you're taking them off, what do? You take them off, you make sure they don't fall off the table. You usually put them in the boxes, put them on, so that they're sitting over the. No, with the polish you're davening, you're not paying attention.
You don't the bathroom, you go. But you don't say that
you don't make a bracha there either. It's where it falls off. We don't make a bracha when you go to the bathroom and you take off a talis. You put it. But let's say you're davening, you talk to your friend in the corner like you're not supposed to in shul, and it falls off. You make a bracha again. It's all because of Hesach Hadas. Where was your mind? Let's keep going. So Abanan Nami Kerebi Abdina. And we too do as Rebbe says, and we Kol Shiva, and we make a blessing of the Sukkah all 7 days of the Chag. because it's a diaraisa, it's biblical, and it says Shivas Yomim, 7 days. And that's what we do today. We make a bracha 7 days, which means, Jeff, even if you lived in the sukkah, right? And even if you didn't want to go according to my father's cheshbon that every meal would be a break, even if you want to say it's not, according to this, you would make a blessing every day. Boom, that's it. And that's how we hold. Anytime we put tefillin, we make a bracha even many times in a single day. They would make a bracha every time they touch the tefillin. Every time they simply touched the tefillin to remind themselves that there was tefillin on their head, they said, "Oh, I got tefillin on my head." They made a bracha. So it's not even the putting it on. I don't know what bracha they would have made, however, because that's a good question. Did they make the bracha of lehoniach tefillin, of putting it on? Couldn't be. They can't put it on because it was already on. But no, they would have made the Baruch Shem Kaveh Mechusei is an extraordinarily different. They probably made al mitzvahs tefillin. Baruch Shem Kaveh Mechusei, the other word, since you brought it up and I didn't want to get into it, is very, very hard. Why? Because we hold Suffolk brachas lekula. If I have an uncertainty about making a blessing, I don't make the blessing. Oh, okay. Very good. That I'm watching your command, I'm watching your ordinance. Very good. The question about Baruch Shem Kaveh Mechusei, the other word, is as follows. Extraordinary hard. The Ramah brings down, why do we say Baruch Shem Kaveh Mechusei? Because it's Suffolk brachas. Because it's Suffolk brachas. The problem with Suffolk brachas is Suffolk brachas lekula. If I don't know for sure whether I should be making the blessing or not, I don't make the blessing because brachas ain't a me'akeves, because blessings are not essential. Even though wrong, you don't make the blessing. So how is that's if you did it by accident? But we deliberately make the bracha al mitzvahs tefillin, and we deliberately then go ahead and say Baruch Shem Kaveh Mechusei Yoyla Boed. So by the Sharash, why you make and al mitzvahs tefillin is not the bracha. The ikar mitzvah is lo niach, to do the bread, to do. We make a blessing on the doing of the mitzvah, not on the mitzvah itself. And here we are making a bracha, and deliberately we're saying Baruch Shem immediately. So what?
You just say the honey
and then you make up. No, I say al mitzvah tefillin. I do, and I say Baruch Shem. No. I'm telling you what the halacha is. We make al mitzvah tefillin, we say Baruch Shem. So it happens to be there is a fascinating Aruch HaShulchan. I think it's the 25th paragraph right at the beginning. Paragraph Hey. I could be wrong. It could be Chavav, but it says like this. He says, "You're right. We do not say Baruch Shem because of Saba Brachas. We say it because it's a Birchas Haidah. Thanks. When Yaakov Avinu saw Yosef, right? One said Shema, and the other one said Baruch Shem. That means, he says, because Tefillin, the Shechina is upon you. The divine presence is upon you. In the words of the Torah, the divine presence, right? What do you call it? The divine presence upon you? Out you say Baruch Shem Kaveh Mechusei Yoyla Boed. That's what I do. So that's why when I put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, after I learned that Aruch HaShulchan, when I put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, I don't make brachas on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, right? We don't make brachas, but I still say Baruch Shem. Because if it's a Birchas Haidah, I can say Baruch Shem, right? And once I learned the Mitzvah, no, I put on the tefillin, and then I say Baruch Shem Kaveh Mechusei. No, I tell you. That's why you should say it. If I can't, because it's a bit so dark. So how do you answer up the Ramah? So I wrote a whole pirush on this a long time ago, whatever. If there's an argument to be made, since the ikar mitzvah is always on the doing of the mitzvah. So what's the bracha al mitzvahs? on the mitzvah itself. If you want to argue that bracha itself is a birchas haidah, that bracha itself is a blessing of thanksgiving, and that's the suffix. Do you make a bracha on a Thanksgiving bracha, or should you make a Thanksgiving bracha? That's the suffix. That's a suffix d'oraisa. That's a biblical suffix, because there's a chiyuv, brother, which we learned from Birchas Hamazon, right? Because the remember I told you the Bavli is suffix whether women are mechuyev in Birchas Hamazon, but the Yerushalmi is vadai that they are mechuyev in Birchas Hamazon, because the first bracha of Hazanas Ha'olam K'Loi B'Tzavai, no, Hazanas Ha'olam is a Birchas Haidah. The next bracha says Al Barischa Shechasamta B'Bsarenu and the Nachla, right, and all that. That's why the Bavli is mesupik when it was written. But the first one's Haidah. So the Yerushalmi says the Haidah one, Mamachan the Haidah. But we say you have a chiyuv to give Haidah to Hashem. And Ramosha brings down when it comes to Birchas Haidah, there's no difference between men and women. They're all mechuyev. So I said if the Birchas Haidah and our mitzvahs telling us the Birchas Haidah, and that's the shaila now. That's the question, whether you should be making a Birchas Haidah or not. Now I understand the Ramah. He says, Sophic brachas, make a Baruch Shem Kavay Malchus in the Bible. It's a Sophic bracha d'oraisa. Ask his father, the Svardim do.
Grandma, it's only for men. As far as the Rambam basket, that, what do you mean? Women are part of Knesset Yisrael. They don't have to do it, but
They can do
They can do it. He said, no, we're going way off the thing. Listen, no. But now you're understanding what happens in yeshiva. Exactly what we just did right now is what takes place. This is what Brad's doing up there in Eretz Yisrael. They start a Gemara, and the next thing you know, but why? What's going on? And the next thing you know, 3 months later, you forgot what the Gemara was all about, but you've just gone in there and back. And this is exactly it. Yeah, you're sitting and learning, yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's, okay. Yeah, because the guy here.
halacha for everything that's dictated.
On every day.
All the mitzvahs, everything that we're doing, the whole, everything. Like we said before earlier, you have to emanate from somewhere.
It's got to start from
This is the debate.
This is the debate. And I want you something on the page, by the way. This is 400 years worth of debates here. Because it's starting from the Tanoim all the way back to Rav and Abai and so on, so it looks like they were all sitting together at the table. This is a running argument that took at least 400 years to work its way out. That's the beauty. And of course, we're adding to it. So we're right there. We're learning with them. There we go. So as my father says, you're learning. I'm not learning it, right? Baruch Hashem, these are my chaverim. These are the guys. That's it. Amma Masutra. You're never alone. These are chaverim. Amma Masutra. Chazina Leila Rapapi, Asura Papa, the Kol Amos, the Manach Tfilin Bebarech, Rabbana Debate Rabash, Kol Amos, the Mishnashibu Bebarech. Every time I touched the Tfilin, they made a blessing. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel, Mitzvah Lulav Kol Shiva. We make a blessing on the Mitzvah Lulav all 7 days, because I hold that even on the rabbinical part, the 6th day, 2 to day 7, you still make a bracha. But Rabbi Yeshua Belevi Yomi, Yom Rishon Mitzvah Lulav. Yom Rishon is the first day. It's biblical because it says, it's only a mitzvah of the elders, i.e. the Rabbanon, and we don't make a blessing. Says Rabbi Yitzchak Gaimer, Kol Yoima Mitzvah Zekanim Afilu Yom Rishon. Every day of the Yom is a mitzvah of the Rabbanon of the Zekanim, and you make a blessing, and therefore you never make any kind of blessing. So it says the Gemara about Kimmel, the Yom Rishon, the Araisa. But what are you talking about? The first day is biblical. You're right. Got an editing problem. Ema bar miyom rishon. Except for the first day, all the other days, you leave right there. You can't be because this. So it has to be an editing. And this, by the way, that's perfectly fine. because you have to remember, this was all Torah Shabbat that was written, handwritten, during persecution. Rebbe wrote the Mishnah 100 years after the Churban Bayis Sheni. The Gemara was written during the next 300 years, right? It was established until year 400 when it was sealed by Rav Ami and Rav Asi, right? This was all during the time when they were being dispersed to all four corners of the earth. And yet, look what we have in our hands. It's amazing.
Kind of instances always strike me as strange because how close they were by Jewish standards to the original, and also the level of insight that they had to the original work that they would even need to edit like that.
And yet, this is what we keep on talking. Every time there is destruction, like we said at the Holocaust, my father is a Holocaust survivor, right? He grew up as a guy in the war. My grandparents were hidden, right? One grandfather learned by the Marabris V'Toshnan. The other one learned by the Yagid Yaakov of Popo and the Yosef Tzvi and Chus, right? By the greats of the previous generation. Nonetheless, they came out of the war. All their men haven't changed. One was David Nusrat Sfard before the war. One David Nusrat Ashkenaz after the war. The other one just the opposite. Ashkenaz Sfard. One became. The rules all change. When destruction happens, things get forgotten. That's what happens. It's just the nature of the thing. Good morning. Okay, so we've got exactly 7 minutes to at least get up the other days. We're never catching up here. Now you understand why. Because how can you let it? The daf is just it screams off the daf. No. This is exactly the same thing. What's the difference of Rabbi Yitzchak? Rabbi Yitzchak. Let's keep editing. And so too does Rabbi Yitzchak go and concur with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rav Kol Shiva Mitzvot. And the truth is, Rav holds that all 7 days you do make a blessing, even though the day 2 to day 7 is rabbinic in nature. One who kindles the lamps of Hanukkah has to make a blessing. So you see Hanukkah, which is clearly happened during the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, not only well after the first temple, after the destruction of the first temple, well into the second Beis Hamikdash, only 200 years before the destruction of the second temple came Hanukkah, and nonetheless we make the blessings. Now, by the way, before we go, what was I going to say over here? No. So that you got to go ahead and make the blessing. Rabbi Yirmiyah, one who sees the lamp of the Hanukkah lamp makes a blessing. That means if somebody's walking on the street and he didn't light yet his own candles and he doesn't think he's going to get home in time to light his own candles, and if he looks up and he sees somebody else's candles, he should make a blessing. And this would be Mekayim. By the way, this is only one of a handful of times in Shas that Hanukkah is even mentioned. There is no Mishnah except almost to the side. Rebbe in the entire Mishnah never discussed Hanukkah, only as a throwaway line. There's a throwaway line. The only reason why we even know what Hanukkah is because of 3 daf and 3 pages in Masechta Shabbos that goes, my Hanukkah, what's Hanukkah? It's a very interesting thing. My Hanukkah, what's Hanukkah? There were people who had forgotten what Hanukkah is, so they had to write it down. What's Hanukkah? Well, because it's very, yes, Dad.
It's not to edit, you say somebody walks in the street and sees it, you make it look.
Right.
That somebody doesn't have a house. He's a homeless guy.
Oh,
you know how you know that?
Yeah. Tyson. Wow, which Tyson?
Very Tyson.
Last 2 lines. The ain biyodam l'kayim mitzvah. It is not in its. B'nei Adam, people, shein lehem batim, that have no houses. The ain biyodam l'kayim mitzvah. It's not in their hands to be a mitzvah. So the Daddy, wow, I missed that. Wow. A homeless person. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Wow. Thank you, Daddy. Right. Wow. What was it about to haven't been so so homeless. Yeah, it does. When we finish today, I'm gonna make a note for the next time around. Wow. My father, you should know, by the way, this thing is officially on his ninth cycle of the Daf Yomi. But unofficially, it's over 30 because he's now doing it 6 times a day. Okay, this already is his second shear. No, actually, it's his third shear. The first one started at 4:30 in the morning. Right? No, I'm not. I'm only mixing shot with fire. No, he doesn't. He does. Also does every year. Right. So my father does the Daf Yomi 6 times a day. Anyway. Okay, yeah. Okay, right. Except for that, the fact all the Taisus are just flying off the end. My Mevarech. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, we've got exactly 3 minutes. I'm going to try to get us at least to Amid base, which will be a daf and a half by. My Mevarech. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Yoim Rishon Madlik Mevarech Shalish. On the first day, you do all 3 brachas, which are Lahadik Neshel Chanukah, Shasa Nisim Lavesenu, which are on the midst of lighting that we had a miracle happen to us, and thank you for bringing us to this time and place. Good. Haroyi, but the guy who's homeless who sees it, Mevarech Shtayim only makes 2. Which 2 he does? He obviously not lahadlik. He does not make because he didn't light. So he makes the bracha of Shas Nisim and Shechianu. The Kabelah from day 2 and on, day 2 to 8, Madakum Mevarech Shtayim. One who lights says 2 blessings, like we do. Lahadik Neshel Chanukah for the lighting of the candles, and that a miracle happened. We don't say the Shechianu anymore because we covered it already. V'aroya Mevarech Achas, he says Shasa Nisim. Umay Mevarech, here I just said it. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kedishanu B'Mitzvayis V'Tzivanu Lahadik Neshel Chanukah. Did anybody notice what we say over here? Who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us. Now, did God command us to light the Hanukkah lamps, or did the rabbis command us? Good. Hold that over there. But did Hashem command us? It's only rabbinical. Miloi saso. The pasuk says, "Loi saso midivrei chachamim yamin u'shmal." You shall not turn from the words of your rabbis, neither right nor left. And Rashi says, even if they say right is left and left is right, you got to follow them. Okay? So that means every rabbinical commandment has within it a biblical commandment. Is who? Your rabbis. My Thomas. So what? My Mamayit. What does he knock out? Zaman. Right? The one about Zaman. The Shechianu B'Kimonu B'Kiyonu L'Zman Hazeh. Emo Me'at Nes. Why do you say he does that? Say you should knock out the one about the miracle. Says the Gemara, because Nes Kol Yomi. All 8 days of Hanukkah, there was a miracle. Except everybody, the famous kasha, the BJC, the first day there was enough oil. But for 1 day, so there was no miracle. So the answer is, the first day we light from the miracle of the war. That's the easiest answer. You forget, if you ever look at Ala Nisim, we say on Chanukah Ala Nisim, you'll notice something over there. Rabbim and the many in the hands of the few, right? Tzadikim, the evil in the hands of the righteous. And then it says, and then we came into the base of Mikdash and we cleaned things up and we lit the candle. Doesn't even talk about the miracle of the candles. What does it talk about? Only the miracle of the war. That's the feud against the many. That's the first night. The first night is Lahadlik. We're lighting. That too.
Well, that's also a debate. That's also a debate as whether it's necessary to have oil that was.
Actually, it was not. Oh, that's the Pnei Yeshua's kasha. No, not Shemin Torah. Shemin worked out oil. Shemin, Kosses. Break the Pnei Yeshua. My Hanukkah, the famous Pnei Yeshua, we're never going to get him here. By Hanukkah, he asked the question, what's going on? You don't need kosses. You don't need oil that takes 8 days to process. You can simply take olives off the tree, squeeze them, and boom, you had enough oil. So why did God send us the miracle? So he works his way through. He goes through back and forth. Mitzvah duchya, mitzvah. But he goes at the end of it. He says the question is a good question, and the Pnei Yeshua, who came before the Chassidim, the Baal Shem Tov as a youth saw the Pnei Yeshua as an old person, answers because the Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted to show our love, his love to us. Okay, he wanted to show his love to us. Wanted to show his love. He said because the Goyim was saying, "Ein lech chelik v'lekei Yisrael." You have no chelik in the. You have no. Your God is no longer with you. So he wanted to show that God is that I'm still with you. I'm always with you. And so what did he do? He made the miracle. And he ends the thing, Berlin Nira Nocha, that this I think is the actual pshat. The Bnei Yeshua writes at the end of it, this beautiful, that sounds very Hasidish. In fact, he says this is pshat. Anyways, guys, clearly when it's now 9:05 and the guys we got to call it a day, so we are behind. But all right, we are starting Ashek the show. We're going to start my Mevarach. Yeah, we're going to go. No, we're going to go by. We're going to my Mevarach.